we begin, and we have an exciting group of panelists with us, I wanted to start somewhere personal. So I grew up in a large family. I have many siblings, many cousins. There was always growing up somebody around, always noise. And today I'm an aunt to many nieces and nephews. In fact, 14 to be precise. Two of those are a grandniece and a grandnephew. And what being an aunt has taught me this is that children don't only attach to parents, they attach to whoever shows up. So it could be the aunt who listens, the uncle who plays, the older cousin who explains something patiently, or even a neighbor who's watching you as a kid when you're out in the street cycling. So nobody formally invites you or appoints you to these roles, but children do know who is there, and parents know who help. So for the most part, care is not a title, it's participation. And today, through this discussion and through the articles in Early Childhood Matter, we are asking, how do we expand participation in caregiving? And how do we widen this circle, not only beyond mothers, but also beyond parents and into communities? So today we have three very accomplished guests. I'm very excited for this conversation. They are fabulous contributors to this year's Early Childhood Matters. And I will invite them into the conversation one by one, and then we will have a moment towards the end for questions for all three of them together, but also from the audience. So we will, of course, take questions as they come in the chat. I can't promise that I will be asking questions as we go along, but we'll have an opportunity throughout, hopefully, but also definitely at the end to address some of that. So we hope that this will be a participatory session in the spirit of the topic itself. So first, I would like to invite Lee Gettler into the conversation. And Lee is a professor and department chair of anthropology at the University of Notre Dame. He is also a leading expert on the study of biology of fatherhood. So Lee, welcome, and thank you, of course, for being this year's contributor to Early Childhood Matters, but also to this conversation. So your article basically challenges a deep cultural assumption that caregiving is somehow natural for women and secondary or optional for men. So could you walk us through actually your research and what happens biologically when men become fathers?
Hi, Rushda. Yes, thank you. Thanks for that kind introduction, Rushda, and it's great to be here with all of you. So as Rushda just said, much of my research focuses on the biology of fatherhood. So we look at how men's bodies, through changes to their biology, respond to the transition to fatherhood and the roles that they play in families, caring for their children, and being supportive partners. I specifically look at hormones like testosterone and prolactin and oxytocin. I don't want to get too kind of bogged down in thinking about evolutionary perspectives here, but I think it's actually really important to emphasize something that I think is not that well known, which is that human fathers are really exceptional when you compare humans to other mammals. In almost all other mammalian species, the dads don't do any care at all. I mean, frankly, they provide sperm and nothing else to their offspring. And after that, their parenting role is done effectively. So humans are really exceptional in these diverse and really intensive roles that dads can play in families, which take different forms all over the world and different forms within societies. But the fact that human dads can do these things and are often really intensive caregivers and really sensitive, nurturing caregivers suggests that this is something that was really important in the history of our species. So this is not a novelty that has only arisen in different societies around the world in the last 30 years or so. It actually has a much, much deeper history in terms of the way that humans kind of came to be the species that we are and the way that we've become so successful. And so the fact that we at least think that this was important evolutionarily kind of sets the stage for why you would ask questions about men's biology changing when they become caregiving fathers and partners. And so what we have specifically done is tracked men through time in different parts of the world look at how their biology changes as they move from being single non-fathers to being committed partners and fathers. And what we've found is for testosterone, following a big group of men in their 20s, when men went from being single non-fathers to being partnered fathers, their testosterone dropped really dramatically on average, about 25%. So again, these are men in their reproductive primes in their 20s, and their testosterone is going down really meaningfully. This is actually a similar pattern to what you see in other types of species where dads help take care of their young. So humans kind of show these similar biological changes to what we see in birds and fish and a small number of other mammals like rodents and monkeys, where dads help take care of their babies. And it really kind of, to Rushda's point, I mean, it fundamentally challenges this assumption that biological mothers go through all of these really substantial changes with pregnancy and birth and potentially breastfeeding, and that dads are just kind of along for the ride. What we now know is that their biology is changing, both their brains and these biological signals like hormones are changing across the pregnancy period. And they're ready. These kind of biological systems are ready from the start to help dads kind of prepare and engage as caregivers. Some of the other findings that we found that related to testosterone is that dads who are more involved with taking care of their kids, so changing diapers, helping put them to sleep, taking them to school, helping them with homework, playing with them, taking them to the park, these kind of hands-on activities, those dads have lower testosterone than dads who are less involved. And this has been found numerous times now across societies all over the world. We've also looked at how other hormones like oxytocin are related to dads' sensitive, nurturing involvement. If you read the early childhood matter piece that I wrote, there's a picture of me doing skin-to-skin care with my son. That baby is now almost 12 years old. But when he was born and we did that skin-to-skin care, he and I were actually the first kind of guinea pigs or kind of test patients for a study we were doing at that hospital, where we were looking at how dads' hormones responded to the first times they ever interacted with their babies after they were born. And what we found is that dads' oxytocin spikes way up the first time they hold their babies. So there's not an acclimation period. There's not this kind of prolonged time period after babies are born where dads are not biologically prepared to engage. That biology is developing and coming online as they're preparing to become parents and from the first moments they interact with their kids. So I think this is really significant in terms of helping us understand the way that we need to support dads as caregivers, because when dads are involved as caregivers, it's good for their partners, and it's really good for babies and kids, and it's good for the dads themselves. And it really just helps create a healthy and dynamic family system if we can encourage and motivate dads to be kind of sensitive, empathetic, nurturing caregivers.
Thank you for that, Lee. And so that leads me actually into two questions, but I'll ask the first one first, is that, of course, you're doing this science and you're a dad yourself, and then you're following this research. How has that shaped your own entry into fatherhood? You described a little bit of it, and also how experiencing the changes yourself helped you be a better partner, a better father. Could you reflect a little bit for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I referred to that kind of large study we did where we tracked men through time when they were in their 20s. I actually started that research when I was in my mid-20s, before I was a dad. So I was interested in these questions before I was married or became a father myself. But once my wife and I decided to start trying to have a baby, then I started collecting a lot of biological samples from myself so I could do research on how my own hormones were changing. So I collected samples from myself for I collected about 50 samples from myself over time so I could track my hormones through my wife's pregnancy and after our son was born. And my testosterone dropped really dramatically, kind of following that same pattern that we found in the broader study, to the point that my testosterone after my son was born was in the range of what a breastfeeding mom's testosterone looks like. So it dropped really, really low. And that may have been in part, reflective of this kind of shared biology that dads have more generally. But my son was also a really challenging baby. He was colicky, so he just cried uncontrollably for hours for a lot of the first year of his life. It felt like he never slept for years. And those things certainly can kind of intersect with some of this biology. But I think, having gone through that, which, really requires just an incredible amount of sensitivity and patience and empathy when your baby is crying uncontrollably and you can't do anything for them, and just trying to hold them and soothe them for hours. It speaks to, I think, this broader issue of why these types of biological changes are really important for dads, and for moms too. But it's sort of a just extreme example of how this biology can help you be a kind of, it enables sensitivity and warmth and empathy that are really, really critical for developing those bonds and being just a patient, nurturing parent during those early months, which can be challenging in a lot of ways, even if your baby is not colicky. In terms of how knowing the science before I became a dad, I think it sort of gave me a sense that, sort of like, I've got this. I had confidence that I was ready to be a dad, even though I didn't really have all that much experience. Like, I didn't babysit kids when I was growing up. I am the oldest of 3 kids. So I have a sister who's 6 years younger than me. And I did help take care of her when she was little, but I didn't have a lot of experience with babies, in my teenage and young adult years. But I think understanding the science helped give me confidence that I was ready, that I wasn't kind of, again, just along for the ride, or that I wasn't going to be this kind of bumbling buffoon who didn't know what I was doing, like dads are often portrayed in the media. And so I think it really just gave me a sense that I wasn't starting from zero compared to my wife, and sort of helped me disentangle myself from some of those cultural assumptions around maternal instinct that I think are really prominent in U.S. society and lots of places around the world.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Thanks for sharing. One of the things, as you described it also, I find really powerful in your work is that it's reframing fatherhood, not as helping, but as something that is deeply embedded in human biology. So if caregiving is shaping men physiologically, then it's not helping or charity, it's capacity that is waiting for an invitation. And I know some of your work actually expands this further. And what I wanted to ask you was that if you could give us some tangible examples of how your work is being used to engage men, make them more comfortable caring for children from the start.
Yeah, I think one study that I'm doing now that could really speak to this issue about ways that we're trying to kind of use this research to motivate men and to give them confidence. And some of the ways that I felt like it helped me is a collaboration that I have with the neonatal intensive care unit, or the NICU, at that same hospital where my son was born and where we did our earlier study on father skin-to-skin care. And I think working with dads and families on the NICU, these are families that oftentimes are facing really challenging circumstances. It's actually pretty traumatic for a lot of families in terms of how their babies end up on the NICU. But in some ways, it's kind of a microcosm of some of the ways that I think we have to kind of collectively think about allowing dads to have a wider lens of what they're capable of and where they can kind of step in to be supportive dads, caregivers, and partners. Because what often happens in NICU families is the baby's on the NICU and the mom stays there. And then the dad kind of comes and goes. And the dads are oftentimes, even if they're really invested, they're just not as present as much. And it's usually for practical reasons. They're still working because the family needs money to sustain themselves. if they have other kids, the dad's often kind of taking responsibility for them. But it takes, so he's, these are dads oftentimes who are really, really, pushing themselves to be present for their families, but they don't oftentimes engage as much with those babies on the NICU. And again, it's in part, we know that dads on the NICU feel like they're not competent to take care of those really fragile babies, those preemies who are so small and really are even more, at least by appearance, more fragile and oftentimes kind of physically more fragile than a full-term baby. And so we're trying to use this research around the biology of fatherhood to work with dads on the NICU to say, okay, here are the things that your body is actually capable of. Here are the changes that we know men's bodies undergo, and your body is kind of ready to help you take care of this fragile infant. How can we communicate this to you? Like, how can we work with other dads to get this message out? How can we communicate this message to the clinical teams that are working with families? So the nurses and doctors and social workers also have this knowledge about kind of what dads are capable of. So in a way that's not trying to take away from the important role that moms are playing, but to help dads understand that there is a broader way in which they can be really supportive partners, be present dads, but also really from the start get involved with these babies and help to facilitate that bond with them. But also something we know from the research is really important is that this is a feedback loop. So there are these biological changes that dads experience, but when dads then are more involved, that in turn affects the biology. And so getting this kind of back and forth between dads being involved, caregivers, and creating the right social context for that is something kind of we're trying to think about a lot in with my research team.
Thanks for that, Lee. And I'd like to move to Morad now, but I have a very quick question for you. Maybe the answer, I want to ask you to be brief, even though I'm sure there are lots of parts to it. What does all of this mean for men who are not biological fathers? So adoptive fathers or grandfathers, uncles, male teachers?
Yeah. Well, being succinct is not my strongest suit, Rushda. You've gotten to know me over time. So I don't think that this actually has much to do with biological relatedness. I think oftentimes, in the context of family systems like the US, the biological dad is often that kind of male caregiver who's in position to play these roles. But we don't know a lot about non-biological parents, but there has been some really good research by a great colleague named Ruth Feldman in Israel who looked at dads in same-sex families and found a lot of these same patterns with testosterone and oxytocin and the way their brains activated in response to seeing cues from their babies and things like that. So I think, to me, this is a point that I think you raised earlier in talking about yourself being an aunt, but it's about the motivation to be in that space with babies and young kids and even older kids, and what are you bringing to those experiences that then helps it again intersect with that biology and kind of bring it online and continue its expression.
No, thanks for that, Lee. And of course, thanks for mentioning Ruth. She has been a featured author in Early Childhood Matters as well. So for those interested, it might be good to also look for that article. Thank you for this, Lee, and we'll bring you back in a little bit. As we move to Morad, I also wanted to ask the audience in the chat, if you could put in the chat, what has helped men in your context step into caregiving? So has it been policy, culture, necessity, role models? We are quite curious to hear from those of you in the audience. And with that, if I may bring Morad into the conversation. Morad, thank you for joining us. So Morad Fareed, founder of FC Mother, and of course a former pro footballer himself. Morad, your article for Early Childhood Matter actually moves us from individual biology, which we were talking about with Lee, to collective mobilization. And for somebody who grew up in India, I've seen, if not football, then what cricket can do to a country. So we are having the T20 World Cup right now. And productivity has dropped across the country. Strangers are talking to each other. People are revamping their schedules to be able to watch matches. And for a few hours every day, everyone is feeling connected to something that's bigger than themselves. And I believe that you, of course, have been doing a lot of work on maternal health and had a light bulb moment with the Moroccan team during the FIFA World Cup. So I wanted to ask you what interested you about maternal health and what made you think that the solution could be in football?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Blessed time to be here with everybody. Thank you. I've been fascinated by maternal health from the day I was born. Everything starts from the mother, my connection to my mother, and the value of our mothers in our lives. It's almost so valuable that it's sometimes minimized into, an initiative or a challenge, but it is something that's universal and central in all our lives. I've been focused on the challenge of maternal health for about a decade, working in traditional public health initiatives. So funding free prenatal centers for mothers, passing maternal health policy, founding maternal health research labs. And all of that was very incremental, difficult, and frustrating because the magnitude of the problem is really not understood. And so how do you address a problem that is the number one problem in global health that nobody even knows is a problem? How do you address a problem that people misdiagnose as a clinical problem when it's a social problem? And how do you address a problem that when you bring up the problem, people get triggered and attack you, which is what happens on mother's health, women's health. You even say the word mother, it sparks this strange, weird response in people a lot of the time that creates this diversion into tangential questions. We're just trying to support mother's health. That's all. And so we're not here to debate and we're not here to get sidetracked into all these things. And so I felt very frustrated with the traditional vehicles. Being a former footballer myself, I've seen the power of football. I've seen global solidarity in the football community. And when I saw this moment at the World Cup where the Moroccan players actually brought their mothers on the field and they celebrated and danced at the center of the field, that was this moment where it was a total flip from incrementalism in small corners and small places and small initiatives to the center of the World Cup. And celebration and honoring our mothers, not treating this like an afterthought or some charity initiative. So total reframe, total paradigm shift, most important issue in the world. We're going to put it on the biggest platform in the world. We're going to put it in the center of the biggest field in the world, because that's what happens when you operate from love for your mother. You're not going to accept anything less than a victory on this topic. And so it really just converted into this football-based approach to unify the football community, unify football infrastructure and fandom, and partner in a new model that reimagines football and the World Cup as a healthcare solution.
Amazing, Morad. Thank you so much for that. I'm told that we are not able to see you. I don't know if you can turn off your camera and turn it back on.
Sure, let me try.
Let's try that. Otherwise, we'll keep going because we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, how's this?
No, we still cannot see you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. We can hear you and we can hear your message, which is very important. So thank you. And Morad, so one question that I had for you is that you have used the word or the phrase World Cup of Healing. And would you share, first of all, what you mean by that? And would you share what aspirations you have for the upcoming World Cup of Healing and how it will turn football fans into communities that support mothers?
Yeah, so thank you. I think the key insight we found working with Harvard and a lab and a lot of really smart people was that 80% of the maternal health problem is social. It is not clinical. So we keep going to the same kind of actors and vehicles when the gap is on the social side. And so how could we mobilize 1 billion fans to support mothers in practical ways? That is the operating question. It's not what is the best health protocol to use during pregnancy. That's a totally different question. We're on the social gap here of 80% that's driving, 194 million life years lost every year. So we're not getting distracted by anything but how do you mobilize 1 billion people? And what we found was this whole gamification model using assists. So the same way the World Cup is won by scoring the most goals, the World Cup of healing is won by scoring the most assists for mother. So we go to the mothers in our community, we ask them what they need assistance with. We ask them to form a care team. That includes maybe their partner, maybe their mother, maybe their best friend. But every mother has a care team. Every mother makes a list of assists. And every mother gets assigned a community health worker team. That's mental health experts, midwives, doulas. And this whole systems approach of multiple layers is assigned to the mother. And so we then, on step 2, partner with the football side. And we say, please give us football rewards, give us tickets, give us in real life player meetings with icons, and let us auction those off for winners of the assist competition. And what we saw in using this model is people love football. They don't love healthcare. They love football. So give people what they love and their behavior shifts. You don't need to throw a white paper at them. Just give them what they love. And what we saw was a 41% behavior change in friends and family by using football as the reward mechanism. We also delivered 100 assists per mother, meaning tangible social support actions of love that a mom requested for each mother in the program. And what that resulted in, because mom is feeling supported, mom is getting assistance, and this gap is closing, is 3 quality life years per mother in the program. And so connecting the dots from mothers and that first layer of community healthcare to friends and family, but the magical layer for us is the football layer, because 100 assists per mother is repeatable. There are 6 billion football fans in the world. We have 4 World Cups in the next 5 years. And so you have, this entire infrastructure that is now partnered to mobilize assists for mothers. And that's what we're really excited about, is something that works, something that people are really excited about, something that changes lives of mothers and families, and is done in this way that is decentralized. There is no gatekeeper. And, as pushing against a lot of gatekeepers in public health, this is a dream for us because we can grow at the speed of football, and that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years.
Wonderful. Thank you, Morad. And that's a huge target, 1 billion fans. And if we can mobilize so many people around the world around sports, then this is absolutely fascinating in terms of what can happen for parenting, for caregiving. And so we know how to mobilize people for sports. We know how to mobilize them for politics, for crisis. And really the question you're answering is, why haven't we mobilized people for parenting or caregiving yet? So thank you for that. Maybe one more question, Morad, before we bring in Ignacio, which is that from your perspective, if we wanted to make caregiving more culturally aspirational, what would need to change? Is it media? Is it language, leadership? What are some of the things you think need to shift?
Yeah, I think the question about culture is always, what's the vehicle outside of the theoretical? So what can you use today to activate culture without trying to force culture? So it's working with cultural mediums that people already love, understand, and are universal, right? And so what we're finding in football is there's no force. Everyone understands what this ball is. This football has more followers than any major religion It's just the ball. And so that is culture. To me, that is the most powerful cultural force in the world. We talk about, the attention and, you talked about cricket. We just hosted the first FIFA Legends match where we introduced FC Mother, the first match for mothers in Monterrey, Mexico. The global audience was 3 times the size of the Super Bowl. And that was an exhibition match on a normal Saturday. So it's a ball, and everyone in the world loves it, understands it, or at least speaks the language. So to me, it's how do you want to use this ball to mobilize what behaviors, what actions, what caregiving ideas? And I think it's more of an architecture around the ball and a design around the ball than trying to do it in an abstract, it's kind of like trying to boil the ocean. It's like, what's the vehicle going to be? So that's kind of our opinion and feeling in, using something that's very universal and beloved for culture.
Great. Thank you, Morad. And of course, it's just a ball, but so much more. So thank you
Right.
For elaborating on that. I wanted to bring Ignacio into the conversation, but maybe to ask you, Morad, also is maybe you can, because there'll be a last part of the conversation with the 3 of you. If you can maybe try to log off and log back in, we might be able to see you on camera.
No problem. I'll do that now. Thank you.
Great. And with that, let's move on to Ignacio Pereyra. So Ignacio, welcome. And Ignacio is the guest editor of this year's Early Childhood Matters, but also runs a bilingual platform on fatherhood and masculinity. And Ignacio, for ECM, you have been focusing on of course, different aspects of engaging fathers, but also building community of support around parents. And you had a panoramic view of how fatherhood engagement is evolving globally. But one personal question first: what were your own experiences becoming a primary caregiver, and how have these experiences then reflected in the interviews and the stories you've edited for this year's issue?
Thank you, Rushda. Hi, everyone. Well, my experience it was just kind of surprising for me because I became a father 7 years ago, and actually it was really surprising because I became, I mean, after 7 months my wife got a full-time job, so I became the main caregiver. And when that happened, I just said, like, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, but I didn't really know what I was doing. It was just like, okay, accepting what's happening. And then many things like start to happen in the personal aspect, because I start to feel weird, and it's like, why I'm feeling that way if everything is like working well. And I will start to feel like, who I am as a man if I am not like earning money, and all these changes. And then also feeling quite isolated or lonely because my friends were just like working, I mean, like nine to six, and so I mean, I am a journalist, and like I was doing like interview with, I don't know, like famous people, or just like traveling around and doing these things, and all these topics were really interesting for my friends or for my family in general. But then when I had to speak about, I was just like, I mean, running behind my child. I was just like, well, what are you talking about? I mean, it was just like, I mean, the conversations were quite also more difficult to have in order, because they were, I mean, they never did, I mean, this job with kids. So yeah, I mean, so it was a whole process trying to understand what was happening to me, and related to that, I mean, I would have loved to know all Lee Gettler like research back in times, because it would be really helpful for me to understand like what was going on like, I mean, on my body, no? Because all these biological changes are really helpful in order to get like, let's say, rational thinking to understand what's going on in my emotions. So I would say, I mean, one of my main goals as editing ECM was trying to involve father as much as possible in each article, and trying to figure out when the word mothers arise in the article, thinking like, is really mother the word that we should put there, or we should be talking about like fathers, or more extended concept of family, because in that way we are expanding the meaning of care, that is not the responsibility of the mother, but it's just something like, it's a collective like responsibility. And I really think that, yeah, getting fathers involved in this is helpful for everyone. It's helpful it's good, and it's fair, because I would say like it's helpful for the mother and for the child. But something that also were mentioning before, and Lee said very well, it's just good for fathers, because it's also a process where we get really we get a lot of things that we should talk more about. I mean, as fathers, just as we get involved, I mean, we can find meaning, we can find like a lot of things when we get involved in this process of fatherhood.
Great. Thank you, Ignacio. Very interesting. And also, one question for you in terms of the issue itself is that kind of thinking through this idea of how do we move from good individual fathers to societies that actively support and also expect father engagement. Could you share some specific examples that you've seen across the different themes in early childhood matters, example of authors and articles you think that the audience should read that could be of interest to them? I know you have links, but if you could also talk a little bit about these.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are a few articles focused on fathers that are really important. I'm gonna drop the links so people can like go to them, and I'm gonna speak about a little bit about them. So yeah, that's the articles. So yeah. I mean, I really think like we need, policies to change in order to get fathers involved. That's true, and in many places it's more evident than in others. Depends where we are in the world. But something that Andres Neumann, the writer we interview on ECM, is he wrote a book about being a father, and he did many important things that is like speaking about being a father from when his wife was pregnant. And I think it's really important because it's also going against the myth that fathers, don't play a role when women are pregnant and in the first year, let's say. And so what I'm trying to say is that we really need like a cultural change. We need fathers speaking out loud about what does it mean to be a father. But I'm not trying to make a idealization of that, because becoming a father is the best thing ever, even if I think like it's one of the best like experience, at least in my personal life. I mean, it's where we connect with the mystery of life, is where we can find like meaning. Is also, it's also give access men to the emotional world. That is something that we really, in general, we need to do as men. And so what Neumann was saying, at some extent, it was, okay, we need to talk about what does it mean to be a father, with the challenges and with the good side, but also to make this, making this public in order, that makes like a lot of changes in other fathers. Okay, so if he's doing that, I also can do the same thing. It's not something incorrect. When I was, in my first year of a father, I was thinking many times, this is correct. It's okay. Should I be in the office instead of being in the playground 9 a.m.? Or I remember like being in in the pediatrician, like, and the pediatrician like staring at me, looking at me, and it was just like, what's wrong here? And the pediatrician suddenly said like, so where is the mother? Like waiting the mother in order to start, I mean, the medical appointment. It's just like the mother is working. And but I remember feeling that that was okay, but I didn't have the knowledge and the tools, no, that you can find like reading, for example, ECM, or all the articles I just shared, what Lee Gettler said, like when you have background, that really helps in order to build a narrative. And this is what I'm trying to say, that if we build a narrative around what it means to be a father and how this affects our bodies, but so we can understand, okay, this is affecting me in this way, so I'm not a weirdo. It's just like, okay, all these changes are happening in my brain and in my hormones. So, okay, this is not a personal failure. It's just something like happening to everyone. So that can help you in order not to feeling really isolated. And so I think there are many, many things that we need to build in the cultural change in order to make fathers more available and to allow them to be fathers and to get involved. That has like two sides, no? And one of them is like the responsibility of care.
Yes, absolutely right, Ignacio. And uh, I want to bring all three of you together, but one quick question for you, if you can keep it brief, is that was there anything that surprised you most across the submissions?
I mean, I would say like many, and each article has like at least something that surprised me. For the topic we are talking about now, the one I really love, I didn't share, but it's the one with Shir Atsil, where she really points out that babies are not expecting the mother, neither the father. They are expecting an adult who takes care of them, and this is really important in order to understand that. I mean, to make it easier for mothers and also easy for fathers and to everyone, also to put apart like the guilt, and also to expand the message that we really need the village in order to raise kids.
Great. Thank you, Ignacio. And thank you also for posting the link. I'm sure it's very helpful for the listeners, but also to hear your experience as you worked on the issue. So I'd like to bring all three of you together. And if we can see everybody on screen. Morad, we can see you now. So great.
Hello.
Hello. And I think Lee is also here. Yes, Lee's here. Great. So just in terms of kind of having this discussion together. Of course, we've talked about caregiving capacity, Lee, with you, and so caregiving capacity we discovered for fathers is biological, mobilization, and we talked about mobilization and cultural aspects of it. And then in terms of your work, Ignacio, also thinking about narratives and cultural shifts and systems and how they can enable or block participation. So one of the things, and this is kind of a bigger question of how do we intentionally design societies where caregiving is shared, and so the question really before all of us is how do we move from accidental support systems to intentional ones? And I wanted to pause there and ask you to comment a little bit on what you think is needed in terms of shifts in society right now to be able to expand the circle of caregiving. Maybe we go in the same order. Lee, could I call on you first?
Sure, it's probably maybe it's beneficial to go first because then I can cherry pick the easiest answers. No, well, an obvious one that I think has come up actually a fair amount in the chat is workplace policies, particularly in some place like the United States where we don't even have legally guaranteed leave for mothers, paid leave for mothers, let alone for fathers. But something that I think those of us who are working in this space around the biology of fatherhood have been trying to find ways to communicate out to the public and policymakers is that giving fathers the opportunity to have this time early, like from the start with their babies and their young kids, one, is beneficial for the family, it's beneficial for moms, it's beneficial for dads, but there is this biological process that kind of gets kick-started and can, we refer to it as like the compound interest of allowing dads the time to be involved with their babies from the outset. So I think that's a big one. And I think someone else in the chat brought up just that in their own family, one of the ways, something that was really beneficial for her and her husband was that she wanted to make sure that he got one-on-one time with the baby and then sort of stayed out of his way. And I think this speaks to some of Ignacio's experiences too. And it also, my wife didn't have any paid maternity leave, even though she was a neonatal intensive care unit nurse on the unit I work with now. But she went back to working the night shift when my son was a few months old. And so I was with him by requirement. I wanted to be there, but it in the same way that I think Ignacio's partner went back to work and had a job, and that put him in this position of being kind of having extended periods of sole caregiving for the baby. I think finding ways, whether it's in terms of, again, workplace policies or encouraging fathers and their partners to find opportunities for dads to have that early one-on-one time is a way we can really kind of help to facilitate change over time. And then the last thing I'll say, and maybe this is just a bridge to my colleagues here, I was taking a lot of notes when Morad was talking about, what's the cultural medium? Who are the messengers? I think one of the things that's really important to think about, I'm an anthropologist, so I try to think about these things cross-culturally in terms of just different cultural systems and what are the roles for dads. I think we need to meet dads where they're at and find ways of kind of packaging the role of caregiving that aligns with current values. And that's an inroad to start making cultural change where caregiving is an expected component of what dads do. But when that's not the kind of expected role for dads, and you want to try to encourage that, then you have to align the messaging and the what dads are capable of. Like, maybe even don't even use the word care. Maybe it's teaching. Maybe it's molding their kids into upstanding moral citizens in a more patriarchal society. But those things can all involve interaction that is actually care. You're just reframing it in a way that aligns with the value systems of the dads themselves and in the kind of broader society. I can stop there.
Thanks, Lee. Morad?
Yeah, Lee, as you were talking, it brought me back, and she may even be your colleague, to Dr. Darshan Narvez, whose work blew my mind, inspired me. When I read it one night, I had to call her the next day as a cold call, and she was kind enough to take my call. And what blows me away from her work and many other prolific researchers' work was that these are very innate and also known solutions. And so how do we get them into the consciousness of everybody? How do we get them available and accessible and encouraged to everybody? And so after, kind of seeing the same pattern, that the solutions are known, but the system needs to be designed. And so our focus has been on social health system design. So how do you distribute, fund, incentivize, measure, track all of these things? So it's the nuts, bolts scaffolding of a social support, social care system that I think is what we're really looking at with what we're designing, because you can't just do one part of it. And we've learned that over time because everything's connected to something else. And so the system approach to care and everything that entails for us needs to leverage existing infrastructure that is everywhere in the world. We don't have 1,000 years to build it, and we don't have $100 trillion. So what is the largest unused infrastructure that is in every city and village in the world today? And, there's a few directions you can take, but that's what's given us such, I think, this anchor about now how do we collaborate around that infrastructure with amazing programs, solutions, and insights. But, for us, it's been like that foundational architecture, that foundational infrastructure needs to be designed, built, and connected.
Great, Morad. Thanks for that. Of course, it's about using what's already there. And if we can write on the systems that exist, then we'll get further, faster. Thank you. Ignacio,
Rushda,
over to you.
can I just say one thing really quickly? And I don't want to distract us from the important points that Morad just set up. But Darshan Narvaez taught me as an undergraduate. So I know her really well, but she taught me when I was like 19 years old because I went to college here at Notre Dame. So yeah, I've known her a long time.
Yeah. I heard Darsha being channeled through your words, man. That's amazing.
Over to you, Ignacio. Thanks both.
Well, I really second what Morad and Lee just said, and I would like also to add, or like also related to what they said. I think it's important going where dads are, and for example, what Morad is doing, going where men are in many parts of the world. They are, following football, so going there. So going to looking for the people and not expecting that dads are going to like just the opposite way. Actually, if as Lee said, and from my experience too, it's not that I choose I'm gonna be the main caregiver. That happened in my life, and because of this experience, I understood many things. So that means the experience looked for me, and I didn't look for the experience. So what I'm trying to say also is we need to push a little bit fathers and encourage them in order to, hey, let's do this because it's good for you, but also to meet them, I would say, like at least from my side as a journalist and also kind of an activist with my newsletter. I think we really need to use infrastructure, as you said, Morad, but also thinking, listen to them, listen to the fathers to understand their language and also speak in their languages. That means trying to be more pragmatic with the fathers in general. So what are you feeling? And why are you feeling what are you feeling? So trying to connect with the fathers in order to get them their attention, no? So for example, there are a group of fathers in the UK. What they do is just like they gather together, they go to the stadium together, they go for a beer after, and then it's someone who is like guiding the conversation around. And so that means like you go to the place, you use their environment in order to get them engaged, because otherwise sometimes when we use more specific or academic vocabulary with fathers, they become quite like scared. It's like, what are you talking about? So it's just like they already feel like weird as a father, and then when all these like things, also as a journalist, when we explain like complicated things in complicated ways, they are like, I am not understanding anything. Just tell me what I need to do. So what am I supposed to do with this baby that just came to my life? And it's like, okay, it's gonna be okay. Your body's changing. It's gonna be okay. The biology, as Lee said before, the biology is gonna help you to do the job. Many dads were there before, and they didn't speak about that. But many fathers were taking care of the kids like in the past. And the thing that we need to do now is speak public about these things in order to get other fathers, like, let's say, contagious this idea of being involved. And so, yeah, I would say like going where the fathers are, and also use the vocabulary they are using. And for that, we need to really listen to the fathers.
Thank you, Ignacio. So we are almost at time. We have 3 minutes to go. We have a few questions for the audience. We don't have time for all of them, but I did want to acknowledge some of them. And one request in particular for you, Morad, we have a request that the gamification proposal is extremely interesting. It's a valuable idea. And would it be possible for Mr. Morad to share his experience with Flamengo in Brazil? So there's thumbs up. And,
absolutely. Yes.
Great.
Yes, we have a whole study on that. We're happy to share that with you anytime offline.
Wonderful. And there is a question on how can we involve fathers in more patriarchal society. I feel, Ignacio, you answered a little bit of that. If somebody wants to have a go very quickly, then I'll let you do that. I think this requires a longer answer, and so you're hesitating to take it off. That's okay.
Rushda, I think the short answer to that, the 15-second answer, and it's probably not really satisfying, but I do think it aligns with this idea of meeting dads where they're at and finding ways to align this, motivating them to be caregivers with the existing value systems, like finding ways where they probably do actually spend time with kids. And so you don't have to necessarily frame it as care, but what are the ways that they find value in what they do for their kids, and then encouraging that and trying to get them to understand how, like, the benefits that conveys to kids. I think there's a way to, again, to use the compound interest example, there's a way for that to ramp up both within individual dads' kind of lives, but also kind of culturally over time. And I think that's kind of the way we have to think about it.
Greatly. Thank you so much. And there is one more request from Erica in South Africa saying that despite positive trend of female caregivers supporting being supported by their male counterparts, the female caregivers still fell unsupported. So she was looking for ideas for further exploration, but I'll park it there. And we are at time. So I just wanted to thank all of you. Of course, Lee, you've reminded us that caregiving is embedded in human biology. Morad, you have reminded us that collective identity can mobilize enormous emotional power. And of course, Ignacio, with all your experience in terms of father engagement, all the narratives and cultural shifts that need to happen to change that energy into a reality. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time. And I want to say to the audience that the work ahead for us is to widen the invitation, because we can hear from all of you that caregiving is not scarce, but it's unevenly invited. So again, the work is to widen the invitation to fathers, to extended families, communities, institutions. And really, we know that inclusive societies are not built by mothers alone, but by circles of care that keep expanding. So thank you all for being part of this conversation. And we have another one coming up on February 26th, Thursday. So we hope to see all of you there as well. Thank you.